Okay. So today what we're talking about is rotations. We've talked about translations, which are slides in the coordinate plane. We've talked about reflections that are flips in the coordinate plane. Now we're going to talk about rotations, which are spins in the coordinate plane. So, rotations spin a shape about a fixed point. 15. And the only one we're going to look at with the fixed point is going to be the origin. The origin is the most common, and that is what we are going to be looking at mostly. So, a figure can be rotated clockwise. And clockwise is as you go around the clock, you go towards the right. And then there's counterclockwise, which is just the opposite direction. So for the rules for these, I use the little arrows that I'm drawing above the CW and CCW to help me see my rules or remember my rules. And normally I will always go to a 90-degree angle because there's 3 different angles of rotation you can have. You can have a 90-degree, a 180-degree, and a 270-degree. 90 and 270 pretty much are the same. But you'll see they're over there. 90 clockwise is the same as 270 counterclockwise, and 90 counterclockwise is the same as 270 clockwise. So, if you look down at the bottom, if I take this shape right here and I rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, I'm going to rotate it once this way. If I rotated it 270 clockwise, I'd go 1, 2, 3, ending up in the same spot. Each one of these quadrants is a 90-degree quadrant, okay, because these are right angles right in there. So with a 90-degree clockwise, it's the same as 270 counterclockwise. So what I do if I'm given a question where I want to rotate 270 counterclockwise, I'm going to look at 90 degrees clockwise. Like I'd change it from 270 counter to 90 clockwise. So the trick that I use for that is with these coordinate rules, with any of the 290, the X and Y are going to switch position. So the X and Y switch right here. And then, as you can see in the rule, the X sign changes. If I'm going 90 clockwise, that means I'm going towards the right, correct? So if you look at this, if I'm going clockwise, my negative goes towards the right. That's why I use this little arrow. Okay, when you want to rotate 180 clockwise or counterclockwise, if I go 180 this way clockwise, it'll end up here, and if I go 180 counterclockwise, it'll end up in the same spot. So there's only one rule for the 180 turns, and it is that just the signs of X and Y change. So on this one, this is 90 degrees clockwise. That way will be 270 counterclockwise. Then on that last one, we're looking at counterclockwise with a 90. That means it's moving to the left, turning left. And so on the rule down here, notice that the negative is on the left. So it follows that arrow with the counterclockwise. So here I moved 90 counterclockwise or 270 clockwise. So on that one, X and Y switch and the Y sign changes. Okay, so if I was just looking at something like on my test and it told me I need to know what 90 degrees counterclockwise was, 180 clockwise, and 270 counterclockwise. So I have to write my new rules for those. So to do that, I'm going to look at what?
You want to write this down?
You don't have to write this down. I'm just showing you outside of that page what I was talking about. So it's telling me it's 90 counterclockwise. Counterclockwise moves to the left. So I know with a 90 or a 270 that it's going to switch the place of the Y and the X. Now since this is moving left, which one of those is going to be negative?
The Y.
The Y, because it goes to the left. Now with 180 clockwise, all I have to do is change their signs. So negative X, negative Y. Then I have 270 counterclockwise. The arrow trick like this only works when it's a 90 degree, okay? So if this is 270 counterclockwise, that's the same as 90 degrees clockwise. Yes? So if I'm looking at 90 degrees clockwise, I know that it's going to the right. I know that X and Y are switched, and then which one of those is negative? The X. So those are the three rules that you have to remember for rotations. Oh, did you want to write it down?
Whatever.
So on page 16, we are going to write a rule for that transformation. And I'm going to write the words for it too, but you have to write the rule as well. So if I'm looking at page 16, looking at the first one, I want to write a rule for that. If I'm looking at this, what kind of transformation has happened?
90 degrees.
It's a rotation, and it did go 90 degrees. Counterclockwise. Or you could have written 270 clockwise. Either one of those would be correct, and I would count both of those. Okay, but now I have to write a rule for that, because that's what it asked, And if you can't remember the rule, if you can't remember what's happening, remember you can always go back to the coordinates. So I'm going to look at S and S prime. S starts at 2, 4. Then S prime ends up at -4, +2. So what do you notice about the numbers? They flipped to Y and X, but what also changed? It changed the Y. The Y was positive, now it's negative. So I can always go back and look at a coordinate and its prime to find a rule. Or you could just use the 90 degrees counterclockwise and use the arrow trick.
So that's how you write the answer.
Huh?
How do you write the answer? That's the answer.
For that question, because it just wanted you to write a rule, that's it. If it wanted you to write it in words, that's what you'd have to write. Rotation, 90 degrees, counterclockwise. Okay, so on this one right here, I need to rotate the figure 90 degrees counterclockwise. So if I want to do that, there's one way you can do it with writing out the coordinates, and then there's another way that I'm going to show you that you can use patty paper to do it. So 90 degrees counterclockwise. Now I'm going to switch my Y and my X. Counterclockwise goes to the left, so which sign changes?
The Y.
The Y. So I'm going to look at J, K, and L and write their original coordinates. So J starts out at -4, -5. K is at -3, -1. And L is at -1, -4. Okay, so first thing I know I have to do to get my J prime is I'm going to switch their places. So -5, -4. And now that they're in their new positions, which sign is going to change? The 5. So I'll be at +5, -4. Then for my K prime, I'm going to do the same thing. Switch their places and change the sign of the Y. So -1, -3, they switched, and now the first one in my new one is going to change the sign. So I'll be at +1, -3. And then same with L prime, switch them, change the sign of the one in front. So +4, -1. So that is how you do it with I can't think, with the coordinates. Now I'm going to show you how you can do it with patty paper. And then I'm going to give you some patty paper so you can try. Wow. He has a whole screen camera.
Good.
You got
their stack with it.
Nope.
I hate it.
I hate you.
Oh,
This is not for me. It was now.
Not here. I don't have any friends in Nashville.
You don't? Why?
All my friends are from other
You got
places.
those.
yeah, we.
Do I? Do I though? Okay, Snapchat, if you could focus, that'd be great. Yay, Snap. Being stupid.
Turn the lights off.
Yeah, do that.
Oh, oh.
Snapchat
That's
is
not
steady
hard.
stupid.
You gotta hold it. You put your music on.
Listen to you talk, yeah.
What's going
Hang on. Obviously, I don't want to focus either. Oh, probably because my screen's blurry. Cool. Okay, so with that, there's these pieces of paper called patty paper. I've shown y'all them before today. But when you're rotating a shape, you can put the patty paper over it. And what you're gonna do, what I do is I trace my X and Y axis because that's where my point of rotation is. So you can see I have a little T right there so it can line up. And then what I do is I just have my K, J, and L. So if I want to rotate 90, that means I'm rotating one quadrant, okay? So that means I'm going to turn it one time until the lines of the T line up again. And we just don't want to work.
Oh, I got
So I rotated it one time to where T's line up, and my screen moved, so it's not the same. But you can see they line up. They're supposed to, but it's not perfect. And you can see where your points would be. You could actually see from this that you're at 1, -3, 4, -1, and 5, -4. So you wouldn't even have to write out the rule that I have over here in this part. You wouldn't have to even write that out. You can just actually take the patty paper and rotate it. So like this one right here. So I want to rotate that.
You have to use a new piece every time?
Well, I write on it with marker, and my page is pretty big. It takes up a whole thing. So I have to get a new piece of paper, but with y'all, you could use the same piece of patty paper multiple times.
You still gotta see all of it, right?
There's my T in the middle. L, M, N, and O. And I want to rotate that 180. So I'm going to take that out, messing up my screen. I'm going to rotate it 90, 180.
But why don't you just let me put your pencil?
What?
Why don't you do-
want to look at the screen.
Yeah. So if I look at that, my new coordinates, I can write them out or I can just, do what I need to do with them. But I have L, M, and O.
So if it's 270, then it goes back to the same, oh, never mind.
If it's 360, it goes back to itself. That's why we don't rotate 360, because it just maps it to itself. So if I look at that, I know my new coordinates are going to be for L prime, they'll be -1, -3. M prime is -3, -3. N prime is -4, 0. And O prime is -2, 0. And you can actually see that there. And I'm going to go back to my thing, but that is how you rotate with patty paper. And then you'd have to go back in and graph it at those points.
That hurt.
But as you can see, they line up with my reflection. Rotation. Not like that. But that's how you use patty paper. Again, it's up to you. You can use patty paper on the test. And if you're doing stuff on the computer, patty paper really helps. Like patty paper probably would have helped y'all with y'all's Excel, but I don't have that much patty paper.
Do we need to talk about it today?
Yep.
Do I get a new piece?
Huh?
Do I get a new piece?
Yeah.
I'm all the way through this.
Oh,
Okay, so I was in healthcare, and I was trying to connect my AirPods to my thing, and your little TV thing, it was like Lindsay, and it popped up, and I accidentally clicked it. I was like, oh my gosh, get out, get out, get out. I was like,
Only if you put in the code and you can't see the code.
I was like,
I wouldn't actually have to see this.
I did. I was very nervous.
So go ahead and plot those points on the third one.
where do you get your paper? It's like a little laundry goddamn thing.
That solver sheet?
Yeah, these 30s in there. Just laundry paper.
Yeah,
Now I'm doing math with them and they don't
You could
spell like
honestly
that.
just use wax.
that's much.
Yes, you can use wax paper or parchment paper.
What about 10 for?
Like if you're on a computer, you can actually use you can use notebook paper because you can see through the notebook paper when you hold it up to a screen. But make sure you have this shape drawn and graphed.
Yeah, weird. So what else is there? Reflection, rotation, what else?
Reflection, rotation, translation, and dilation.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so on page 17, we're going to look at the, so looking at number 1, I need a rule for 90 degrees clockwise. That's X, Y goes to, when it's 90 degrees, remember you switch the Y and the X. Since it's clockwise, the X becomes negative.
It's 5.
What?
Number 5, right?
Yes. So on number 5, if you wanted to write that rule, or if you wanted to write that transformation in words, that would be a rotation, 90 degrees clockwise, or 270 counterclockwise.
Which one do you prefer?
Someone might have my
I didn't ask you.
Which one do I prefer over the 90 or 270?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If you wrote rotation 270 counterclockwise, it's correct. I
I
can't
know,
write
I'm
it
saying,
wrong.
like, which
So.
one would you rather do?
I prefer 90s.
Okay, it's.
So if I look at number 3, rotating 270 clockwise is the same as 90 counterclock or 90 clockwise, right? 270 counter, the same as 90 clock. Yeah. So that right there is exactly the same. So 1 and 3 are the same.
I mean, 4 and 2 is 2 and 3.
Are they?
No, they're not.
Okay, so number 2 wants you to rotate 180 degrees. So the rule is X, Y goes to, do I switch their places?
No, you switch the song.
All I do is switch their signs. So negative X, negative Y. So which one does that go with at the bottom? Which number? Number 6. So number 6 is just a rotation of 180 degrees. You could put clockwise or counterclockwise. Either one's right. I'm just going to put 180. Number 4, rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So when you go counterclockwise, that's going to the left. First thing I have to do is switch their places. And then which one becomes negative? The Y. And then that matches with 7. So that's a rotation,
You just leave 8.
90 degrees
Number 8 is number 2.
counterclockwise,
I mean, no, wrong.
or 270
Number 8 is
clockwise.
number
No, it's not.
3.
No, it's not. No, it's
Number
not.
8 doesn't match any of them.
That's
So
Yeah.
if I look at number 8, can it be a 90-degree rotation? Could it be either of them?
No,
No. Why not?
because
Because you only changed the one.
Yeah.
they didn't flip it like
They
they're
didn't
supposed to.
flip. Their places didn't switch. So it can't be a 90 or 90 clockwise or 90 counterclockwise. Could it be a 180?
Yes. I got it.
No,
No, it can't
because
be a
the
180.
X didn't change.
You can be like that.
The X didn't change.
I think.
But do we have a reflection rule?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Which reflection changes the Y sign but not the X?
X-axis.
The X axis.
I love doing ELA and geometry because we're doing what we did last time, so what we're doing now.
We're doing algebra.
Yeah.
This is not algebra.
I thought this is geometry.
This is geometry.
This is geometry, but that you do reflections in algebra.
Yeah.
Well, so you're saying we're still doing algebra stuff, we haven't even started geometry?
This is geometry. It just uses algebra concepts.
Oh,
Algebra and geometry come together a lot. We use a lot of algebra and geometry.
what about geometry? They use a lot of geometry and algebra.
Ooh.
What about 2? No?
You really only use geometry and geometry, pre-calc, and calculus, and trig.
What's true?
Trig is trig. Sine, cosine, tangent, unit circle.
Okay, alright.
I have a question.
Is it easy?
So we just like not gonna go over algebra 1, like we're just going to do 1. We didn't take
We just did go over algebra.
We went over algebra 1. We went over the main concepts of algebra 1, the factoring and solving. Basically what you needed, what they didn't get to, and what you actually need for this class. Like, we didn't go over, exponentials and stuff, or whatever you're supposed to go over at the end of that, but
When I graduate, I'm gonna be like, I didn't even think I was real.
it's patty paper, it like goes in between patties, and you freeze, Okay. So, looking at number 9, if you want to use your patty paper on that, you can. If you want to just trace it and see how many times you have to turn it to find out what it is, you can do that. But it wants you to write a rule for each. Remember, there's only 3 rules, so there's only 3 to choose from for these. But I know I went 1 quadrant, 2 quadrants, right? 1, 2. So if I go 90, then another 90, what's 90 plus 90? 180. So I rotated 180. I need the rule for 180, which is x, y goes to negative x, negative y. And I could find that just by looking at the coordinates of a point and its prime. D is at 3, 4. D prime is at -3, -4. So I could just find the rule off of that. I may not know that it's a 180 rotation, but I could write a rule based off of where it starts and where it ends. Okay. Yes. Okay. So looking at KJ, I can either go this way, which is farther, or I can go the closest route to it. So if I went from this to this, that is a 90-degree turn going clockwise.
But what if you go the other way? It's 270 clockwise.
Counter.
It could be any stuff.
But why would you want to do all that extra work for 270?
It's not really any extra work. It's just
What if you got a paper it is? Cause then you gotta like go.
I don't even read.
Yeah, go. Yeah. There you go.
1, 2.
You gotta add me.
So I need to know the rule for that. So if I can't remember the rule for that, I'm going to look at 2 points. I'm going to look at K, which is at 1, 4, and K prime, which is at 4, -1. So I see that my X and Y switched places. So I know that happened.
Negative X.
And then which sign changed?
Okay.
The X. So there's my rule. Or I could have used the arrow trick. If it's 90 clockwise, the negative goes to the right. And you do not have to write all that on this paper. If you just want to write the answer, this right here is your answer. So technically, if you're on a test or a quiz or a worksheet, that's all you'd have to put for that
Do you
problem.
have to put the point, or you just put it after? Like,
You have to do this whole thing. You have to do the X, Y goes to that. That's how you do the whole rule.
This is reflection over A types, right?
What?
Didn't you write that?
No. No.
So if you look at this one, it looks a lot like it would be a reflection, right? This looks a lot like if you just folded over that X-axis, that it may just be a reflection. But if you look at it, if it's just reflecting over a line this way, these points should line up, right? They should be on the same lines. K is not on the line with anything, and J is on the same line as K prime. So it's obviously not a reflection. It is a rotation. And you have to pay attention to the primes, because see, K is over here, and then it ends up over here. So obviously it's turning, well, it's not obvious, but it is turning, it's not flipping.
is our test gonna be set up like last time?
I don't see the relevance.
I don't know. I can't really remember what y'all's test was like last time. I think on this test there's some multiple choice on the front. And then it's mostly graphing. Like there's some of these where you have to tell me what the rotation, if it's a rotation, or whatever, and then its rule and stuff. And there's some where you have to actually graph the transformations. Okay, looking at this one,
It's 180.
Yeah, that.
it is a 180. I don't like that color. And it could go either way, so I know it's a rotation 180. And then I need my rule. And if I have to look at a point, I can. I can look at M's, 1, -2, and M primes at -1, +2. They didn't switch, but their signs changed on both. So that's -x, -y. Another way you can tell if it's a reflection or a rotation, because this very well, if you couldn't remember, this very well could look like a reflection over y = x. But if you look at it, when you look at this and I start at M and I go clockwise, I go M, N, O, P, right? But if I start at M right here, wait, no, that's with a reflection. If I start at M and I go clockwise, it's M, N, O, P the same, but with a reflection, it will be opposite. It would go M, P, O, N. It's weird. I'll have to show y'all and compare. But the orientation changes, like the orientation of how you go around the shape and the letters changes with a reflection, stays the same with a rotation. It'll be easier when we compare them. Okay, so there's my pre-image, here's my image. If I go that way, I went how many degrees?
90 counterclockwise.
90 counterclockwise. So I have a rotation, 90 degrees counterclockwise. Or you could write 270 clockwise. No, my x's and my y's have to switch. And then which one will be negative if I'm going this way?
The Y.
The y sign changes. You turn back on the light.
Look out.
Oh, right, it burns. Okay. Then with number 13, if I go from M to M prime, that is a 90-degree rotation. And which direction?
Counterclockwise, or clockwise.
Clockwise.
Yeah, I mean, no, like.
So that was a rotation of 90 degrees clockwise or 270 counterclockwise. And the rule is XY goes to switch them
Negative X.
and then -x. No.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Can it be like just 90?
Yeah, if you just wrote 90 clockwise and didn't have that, it's still correct.
Okay.
You don't have to put both of them. I have to process what you were asking. Okay, then this one
180.
is a rotation 180. And that rule, all you do is change their signs. So -x, -y.
Why do we even have our calculators?
It's like, number 17 on the back. It won't fit on the, like, the whole, graph. You want it, like,
Okay, so I just went in and did 17. So, looking at that, I just found its original coordinates, and then down at the bottom of that, I've flipped them and changed the sign of Y on all of them based on the rule that it gave me. And based on that rule, if I see that rule, I know I'm going 90 degrees. Since it's going this way, I'm going counterclockwise 90 degrees. Yeah.
Do we have to grab?
Yes.
Oh, never mind, if you did instructions.
And remember, you can use patty paper for this instead of writing out the coordinates. But on your test, you do have to fill in the coordinate blanks. Like, you may not use these to graph it, but once you graph it, you do have to fill in the coordinates.
We're skipping 16 and 15.
No, I'm gonna go back. Somebody had a question about 17.
Good now.
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay. On number 15, you are rotating how many degrees? If you just change their signs of both, you're
180.
rotating 180. So basically, I'm just going to take my original points and I'm going to change their signs. So L is at -3, +4. So my L prime will be at +3, -4.
I tried to do this on a little paper, but it don't work.
It works.
No, it don't.
Just this.
No, it don't.
Without this.
You have to draw the thing in the
I
middle.
think it's probably just operator error.
Ooh, she really got me there.
She really did, okay.
You have to draw it in the middle. You have to draw it in the middle. So this isn't good enough.
You gotta draw it on the side.
Shut up, guys. We got it. We got cheap.
I'm gonna do that. Ooh.
If they teach you too fast.
The inability to keep up.
It don't bother me.
Yeah, I'll be gone.
I honestly hurt my feelings though.
What, the lack of accuracy?
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, wait, never mind.
Yes, because like I was turning the paper and it didn't look right. And
because you have to, you have to draw those little, the axes, and it'll make it easier to stay where you need to be.
We got a quiz tomorrow?
Well, hold on, what?
Yes.
No, not, no.
You will have a quiz tomorrow over translations and reflections, not over rotations. There might be one of rotations, but
Wait, hold on, that's not,
haven't made it
is
yet.
it,
It's fair.
is it a test or a quiz?
Quiz.
That's a day degree.
Yeah, that counts twice.
That's not, okay. 2 day degree.
We got,
And just in case nobody noticed, if you make higher on the test, like if you made a 50 on the quiz and 100 on the test,
You made 75.
you made 100 on the quiz.
What? That makes no sense.
Wow.
If you check Power School, you'd see. If you made 100 on your quiz, and if you made a 50 on the quiz and 100 on the test, I replace that 50 with 100 you made.
Well, I thought.
Oh, I made 100 on my test.
I already checked.
So if you fail a quiz and pass the test, I replace the quiz because
No
obviously
wonder.
you know what's going on if
I'm like 100.
I got all
you
the
don't check because
Wait,
quizzes
so-
affect you so much.
Alright, I got a 98 on the test. And I got 100 on the quiz.
Yeah, so you made higher on the quiz, so I couldn't change the quiz.
So you're saying if I would have made a 95 on the quiz, I would have got 100 on the. Wait, you're saying if I would have made a 95 on the test.
If you would have made a
No.
95 on the quiz
Yes.
and a 98 on the test,
You would have bought it up to 98.
yes, the 95 will become a 98.
Oh, okay, see, I'm just.
I told y'all that like on the first day, but I just mentioned it.
Alright, I wouldn't remember that.
Okay, so on number 16, you want to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise, which means you're going to switch your X and your Y. And then if it's counterclockwise, the sign of the Y changes. So I can take all those points and I can find my new ones, or you could use the patty paper. It's up to you how you want to do it. But remember, on a test, you're going to have to write out your prime points. So if you just do it with the patty paper, you're still going to have to go and write the points that you found.
I forgot how to do it.
Now we know how to work the same. You just be careful.
Nobody cares. Good. She wasn't there.
She was right.
She wasn't.
She was.
Okay, let's do this.
Oh, you know how to do it, actually? That's so. That's so terrible.
Oh, gee.
I like to cook cheese. Hey, bro. That's 90 degrees CW. No, this is. Y'all guys tell me what points y'all got.
we got,
I'm like, oh, okay, Mrs. We got to say points, okay. I think you copied my answer.
wait a minute.
Right.
Copy my answer. Oh yeah, this patty paper is good.
It'll work good for me.
Oh yeah, that's just user. That's just user error. Yeah. What a loser.
Oh, I did it.
So true. Dude, that's easy.
We had the game last week right here, though.
Okay, so if you look at number 16, you can see that you took that shape and you rotated it 90 degrees, counterclockwise. But make sure when you're doing it with patty paper, go back and label your new points, and you need to write out your coordinates on a quiz or a test. It's not required to write out coordinates on this paper, but it's good practice. And then there's number 17 in case you didn't get all of it.
Let's do 18, 19, 20.
No, shut up.
Do it.
I'm probably gonna skip.
Oh, it is time to go.
You got
8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Hey, we got time for
I
3
think I
problems.
got at
We can do
least
that.
one more problem.
We can do like 2.
But like, just to take it out the door, if you don't get it right, you gotta
She's
stay in
saying
class.
one more
Do
problem,
18.
all of you are saying 2 and 3.
We can do 2.
Thank you,
Yeah, we can do
Listen.
2.
I think we do about 5.
Let's do 22.
Can we let him back your tags?
Alright, yeah.
Y'all can do 2.
You ain't got to.
No, she's saying we're doing one more problem, Owen. Get over it. Okay?
Well, which one are we
Okay,
doing?
I'm gonna do number 18. If it's 270 counterclockwise, that's the same as 90
Clockwise.
clockwise. So that means Y and X switch, and if it's clockwise, the negative goes to the X. And if I'm going 90 clockwise, that means it's gonna end up right here in that quadrant. That's 90 degrees clockwise. So if you don't end up in that quadrant, you've done something wrong. So P starts off at -4, -5. So it's gonna switch places. It's gonna be -5, -4. And then I change the sign of the A, so this one. So I'll be at -5, +4 for P prime. Q starts at -2, -2. Switch their places, -2, -2. Change the sign of the old X. So -2, +2 will be Q prime. And then for R prime is at -1, -3. Switch them. Change the sign of the old X. So -3, +1 is R prime.
Let's go.
Let's
I got it.
You can do another.
Okay.
Yeah, you got 6 minutes for it.
Still gotta clean your
Can you
desk
like
and
zoom it
stuff.
out so I can get the other one?
Should have been paying attention.
I was trying to figure out how to put that thing.
Okay, so tomorrow we are gonna finish up page 18. Maybe we might do a few of them. But page 19 and page 20 are going to be for a grade. So you need to make sure you do page 19 and 20. You might get a little time after your quiz tomorrow. You do have a quiz tomorrow. People online, you do have a quiz tomorrow.
Is the ice so good tonight?
Like it make me mad.
You may have time to work on iPad tomorrow too, but I am going to put in the grades
Yeah.
tonight. Excuse me.
We got.
Are you?
No,
No, you
sure
that's our day.
that's
That's our day.
Nah.
Me and Gucci didn't. You can't do it.
Oh, we talking about
Yeah. No. And it can't.